from Havili was magic. The shift on for Crotty. Boom, far down you go, Quackett Smith. Me, oh my, I have enjoyed that. Yes, boy.
Sit back, relax, put your belt on, and enjoy the show.
For the main course, let's do just that. We're going to go through each of the 5 Super Rugby teams, significant ins and outs, the best starting 15, if all available, in our opinions, and just the stock markets, rising and falling stocks, who we're excited about, etc. So who wants to kick us off with the Brumbies?
Look, I'll kick us off with our new faces. An exciting one, Nick White, off the back of his Wallabies form. I mean, he had some really brilliant games, especially early on for the Wallabies last year.
Technically was in the squad after COVID break, but not really in there to actually play game time.
With Powell, he didn't really get any game time. I think he did come off the bench a couple of times in the back end of it, but he'll be thrust back in, starting half back and get some bulk minutes. So he's a big exciting one for them. Also, James Tucker coming across from the Blues as a lock, and he will be listed as a lock, but can cover the back row. I think we saw him do it in the Mitre 10 Cup this year, and I think he'll be another exciting one for them. Aussie born.
Yeah.
So that's another positive sign there. But
he grew up in New Zealand, didn't he?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and then another one, I haven't highlighted him here, but I'll just throw his name. I don't think we'll see him, but if we do, I'm excited. Billy Pollard. There's just a stack of good hookers in the Brumbies, and it is really unfair for the rest of Australia. Give that man a jersey at another club, and he could be something really, really promising.
I know, it's kind of a sorry champ to Connell McInerney, who has been great, but you really want to bring him off the bench, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Other ones, Reece Tapine, who's come across. I think he was a bit of a leaguey. Archer Holtz from Eastern Suburbs, tight head prop. We've also got Tom Hooper, who's a lock. Luke Reimer, Rory Scott, and Lachlan Albert. So a few new names, but we won't get to see many of them.
And Reimer and Scott are both, I think, open side flankers, where they're kind of lacking a little bit. So they might, we might see one of them rise to prominence.
Yeah, big losses for them this year. You got the Choo-Choo we mentioned before, Tavita Kurandrani, who is going over to the Western Force. Shorter start over there. You got Tony Pulu, who we didn't get to see a lot of at the Brumbies, but again over to the Force. Will Miller, surprisingly, after what I would call a breakout year last year, has retired early to go work on his farm. So I'm not sure how that's come about, but really disappointing.
I hope all the best from him.
Lachlan McCaffrey, one of my favourite loose forwards in Australian Super Rugby, has gone over to Japan. And then you've got Joey Powell, who we've mentioned, going overseas as well. To a lesser
overseas to Rebels. There's no seas between Canberra and Melbourne.
After the COVID outbreak, we would like to cut off Victoria.
There was some talk about it. Yeah.
You got to go over those.
It's just
borders.
as hard.
That's right. A couple other names, maybe not to be missed quite as much, but Shembek Lavui, Murray Douglas, Blake and never play. Guy Porter, all gone as well. So some decent bench kind of options there for them as well.
Where did Vui go? I was excited about Vui. There's a lot of hype train about him.
I think he's gone to Japan, isn't he?
Yeah, the Mitsubishi Dynaballs.
He never got used in the Tars, and then just didn't get used in the Brumbies. I was excited for him to be Alan Alatoa's backup.
Look, I thought he'd gone across there with a sight to the future and build into that squad. I think that was a big move to leave from the Waratahs. Probably the right move with some of the talent that's there as well, but I think he's just been stuck there and he's probably wanted some game time and he took an opportunity, but hopefully we see him back in Australia at some point.
There's big contracting issues for all these teams as well. There's word that the players were being told pre-COVID, before we got some TV rights kind of locked in, that they should look for overseas options as well. So I think we've lost a lot of players for at least short term because of that. But he's very young. I think Leslie Leua-Macon, who ruptured his Achilles last year, will be back as well. So there's more propping depth in the Brumbies. So maybe he's gone for a couple of years and hopefully we get to see him when he gets back for his best years.
And they've got some good young prospects, I think, from Canberra, Tom Ross and Harry Lloyd, who
Yeah, that's right.
All right, well, should we get in the best 15 then? But I'll take us through the forwards and we can kick on through there.
Go on.
Yes, the James Slipper, who will be sharing time, obviously, with Scott CO, but Slippers, your number one. Falaufa and Alan Alatoa obviously picked themselves. Darcy Swain and either James Tucker or Nick Frost, we're putting in that second slot for lock. And the back row, Valentini, Cusack, and Samu, I think they're pretty established and, again, kind of picked themselves. We talked about Jerome Brown, and we really liked him in amongst the mix, but probably not starting, I'd say. So, yeah.
Moving into the backs, we touched on him. Nick White going to be influential for them, linking up with Noah Lolesio. Got a bit of time together, I think, for the Wallabies as well. Solomon Akata and Tom Wright, we suspect on the wings. There could be differences there. Harry might touch on it in a minute with Ira Simone and Len Ikitau, who we think it could be his year. Could have a big one with Tom Banks at fullback.
Yeah, and Nelson takes us very well to our first big question for the Brumbies, which is Solomon Akata going to be spending time at outside centre? And if so, does that mean that they get Muirhead more game time on the wing? So I think slowly but surely Muirhead is winning me over as a far more talented player than I would have liked to let on for a couple of years. He just has the ability to continually finish and deliver. Probably in the same vein as Sean Wainui. You just don't think he's that good, but he just constantly overperforms. My gut feeling is that he's going to get some game time in the centres this year as well. Probably his best position, but surely Leonard Katau is the first in line for that jersey.
Do you really think that his best position is at outside centre over wing? Because I think he's best at the wing.
Well, he could be. Depends on how he's used. He could be a brilliant centre.
I don't think he's dynamic enough at wing, to be honest.
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be, mate. He's the one-on-one king. Just put someone in front of him, put him in a one-on-one. He's going to.
Yeah, the thing about those centres, those wingers are, they have a lifespan, and then they head offshore, and it's not that exciting.
I'm pretty sure Tekeli Naiyaravoro was the king of big wingers, and he never made the international side for more than a test. So
that's true. Harry, you and I were there begging him not to leave, and still my Tars jersey, the only signature on it front and centre is Naiyaravoro's, and it will stay that way.
It's because it took up the whole shirt. Yeah,
that was the biggest loss to the Warriors as far as I'm concerned.
What's the next question, Craig?
Next question. Ongoing progression of Mac Hansen, someone that really lit it up last year, and we're very excited about. Is he going to get more game time? Where is he going to get more game time? So he's played fullback. He's actually played a bit of 10. He's obviously a fantastic bench option. I would love to see him play. I just don't know where. He's obviously going to come off the bench, but...
yeah, he's a great young talent, and I mean, you just want to see him keep developing and getting used there, because he could be a sad one to see just sit on the bench, for the next handful of years, because he could, he's got something special about him.
I think he's only 22 years old. Chances are he's only going to get a lot of game time if you see an injury or two to the outside backs. I think Muirhead's probably the first off the bench for them. Lenny Katau will definitely be on the bench if he's not starting. So I think he's probably just one step too far back to get a bulk of game time. But yeah, he's a very good player, and he can score some fantasy points as well. In a competition where you can't really hold injured players, he could be a very good late pick.
Yeah, the only way I think we're going to see him doesn't have to be a few injuries. Tom Banks has to be injured.
I agree with you completely. I think I said he did find himself playing a game or two at 10, but obviously the Brumbies have 3 10s, so there's plenty of depth there. So I think you're right. It's either Tom Banks gets injured, or they play him against the Force. Who knows?
He could play on the wing, couldn't he?
He could, but as you said, Muirhead's ahead of him.
Yeah, then you put him on the bench.
All right, look, I firmly have him above Muirhead, but I have most people above Muirhead. So,
let's move on with the next question. Who plays in that stacked lock, the outside lock position? We've got Darcy Swain as the loose head lock.
Yeah.
And then the tight head lock. Who is it? Is it Tucker? Is it Frost? Is it Neville? I hope not.
Can I just ask, did you write this question or did I? Which one of us decided they had stacked locks?
Yeah, thank you. I was like, am I going to let this go? Really?
I think you wrote this down. But no, the question is, I mean, it's definitely not stacked. But who plays that second.
Nelson sounds like the kind of bloke who'd be like, yeah, the Wallabies are stacked at locks. You know what I mean? We have so many.
They are. They're all overseas. I also didn't say they were stacked. I said outside lock.
Cargie, what do you reckon?
Well, look, for me, Nick Frost. I've already said I love Nick Frost, but I can confirm we are not stacked at locks. The Brumbies are not stacked at lock.
Thank you for confirming that again. Harry, who
actually, I had temporarily forgotten about Caden Neville, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if Caden Neville is a starter, just a kind of old seasoned head. With starting with Darcy Swain, and they bring a combination of Tucker and Frost off the bench. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. But for mine, Frost is really exciting. He's who I'm most excited about in the locking. So I hope we see more and more of him.
I mean, he's exciting, but I think it looks like he'll be the last out of those four to get a lot of game time. I reckon they've brought Tucker over to give him game time. I hope that Tucker is in battle with Neville for a starting spot, but I think more likely you'll see both of them starting. I think that's what we saw last year with Murray Douglas, to our own disappointment as well. But Darcy Swain surely getting some more game time, and I think Frost is probably going to continue to develop and just get his few moments.
Yeah. Without having seen any footage of James Tucker actually playing rugby, I just looked him up and looked at his photo. Mate, he looks like Blake He Never playing 2.0 to me.
No, mate. Look, realistically, he was pretty promising when he was at in the Kiwi sides a handful of years ago. I think he's quite a decent lock. So hopefully he gets some good game time. But hopefully they start to build and give Frost some game time by the back end of the year.
Tucker's got a Kiwi accent, mate, so he can't be Blake Can Ever play 2.0 because he's clearly better already with that alone.
Do you want to jump on that next question, Harry?
Sounds good.
So does Lachlan Lonergan leapfrog Connell McInerney for the number 16 jersey? And does Billy Pollard get his first taste of Super Rugby this year? What's the order here? McInerney was in the Wallabies squad last year as well, so there's obviously some raps in him, but far out, Lachlan Lonergan and Billy Pollard are exciting young prospects. What do you guys think? We'll start with Cargie on this one because he's the front runner.
You got 10 seconds.
It's true. I think no. Look, they'll reward Connell McInerney for the years he's been there, for making the Wallabies spot. He'll be on the bench the whole time. We'll be lucky if we see Lachlan get 1 or 2 games off the bench. That's what I think.
Well, my opinion is I think they'll start probably with Connell McInerney to be the starter by the end of the year. There's a chance Lockie Lonergan's going to be there for the last couple of games. He's just an exciting player for me. I know it's a huge call.
So your call is by the end of the season, Flowerfinger is their third choice.
No, starting like as in out of those two. No.
You
as in he goes
starting.
Yeah, out of those two, like he's going to be on the bench. He'll be definitely not starting. He'll be on the bench over Connell McInerney by the end of the year. I think if he shows what he did in his 1 or 2 occasions, it'd be really unfair to McInerney, but he is an exciting prospect moving forward. I think you've got to give it to McInerney to start, but at 21 years old, he's very exciting. Billy Pollard, I'd be surprised if we see him this year. I'd love to see him this year, but I don't know how you fit all of them into that that side.
Lachlan Lonergan's only 21 years old, man. I reckon he's developing this year again.
I reckon he'll be developing always.
Billy Pollard, he's 19, mate. We're not seeing him play this year.
I don't think we'll see Billy Pollard.
But, as we said, I think we'll be lucky to see Lockie in 2 games, and hopefully we do, because he's amazing. So rounding out the last question of the Brums, will we see Pasatoa, one of my favourite 10s, as a 10-12 reserve, or will he be stuck behind Bailey Kunzel, who, based on last year, you'd have to say is still kind of firmly number 2?
Yeah, I mean, you got the height and weights there. I don't know who wrote that down. They're both pretty similar size blokes, 185, 186 centimeters. But Rishan Pasatoa is already 96 kilos, and I thought Kunzel was a big guy at 92 kilos. So
that impresses me, actually. And Pasatoa, I can say, hands down, is faster and more agile by a long way than Kunzel.
Yeah, look, I really do like Bailey Kunzel, and I think he was quite good in his chances. I don't think he has the same level, same roof of potential as I think Pasatoa does. It'll be interesting. I think the Brumbies do like to reward people, but I mean, surely you got to give Pasatoa some chances this year, and if he takes those chances, he could be in that bench spot.
And it makes more sense as well, right? Like you got to expect that Noah Lolesio is going to play most of the minutes at 10. They're not going to be subbing him off. So by having Pasatoa, you cover a couple of different positions at least.
Yep.
What's the bet that Pasatoa, another year or two of development, signs back to Queensland as soon as old James O'Connor starts retiring, and he's an absolute weapon by then, and the next top fly half. How good.
Sounds good.
Speculation.
Yeah,
Look, I think we jump into the stocks are rising. For me, we've already touched on a bit. Is Aussie-born James Tucker played at the Chiefs, the Blues, and Waikato.
Didn't play though.
Yeah. Well, he didn't play the Blues, that's for sure, did he? But look, he could be a huge pick for second row this year. I think he's a really quite talented player. Exciting that he can play in that back row as well. Something you'd love to see, second rowers do in fantasy footy. So I think his stocks are rising at the Brumbies, and hopefully he gets some good time.
Do we even care about second rowers this year? I mean, I'll have a look. There's probably like 2 second rowers, and you're like,
that's why you care, mate, because you're trying to get the guy that's going to jump up there. Value-based drafting.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Get your head out your ass, Cargie.
We'll have to listen to the draft podcast next week to get those hot tips on.
That's right. All right, I'll go the other two rising. So Nick White, obviously, Wallabies number 9. I think he can run and attack the line really, really well when he wants to. He also plays a bit of a playmaker as well. So as far as halfbacks go, I think he's going to be a good scorer. The only thing going against him is that Tate McDermott and Jake Gordon are also really good scorers. And Joe Power passes the ball 600 times a game. So they're all going to be competing pretty heavily there. So I don't think it'll make him go early in the draft. And Noah Lolesio, we've mentioned him already. He only played 2.5 games in Super Rugby AU last season. One of those was the final, coming straight back off the bench, straight back from injury, sorry. So he's clearly the first choice. I expect him to get bigger and better again this year. And if his goal kicking cleans up, then I think he'll be a very solid fantasy fly half.
Yeah, look at 0.52 points per minute. He's a pretty exciting prospect there. That puts him above James O'Connor. Puts him, right up there with everyone except for the likes of Josh Ioane and Richie Mo'unga. Richie Mo'unga gets double that. So
huge. No, very good. And I think, Nick White definitely some tackle busts behind him. So he's pretty good day. Stocks are falling.
Yeah, who do you reckon is going to have some falling stocks, Craigs?
Well, look, I see we've written down Caden Neville here. As I've said, I've alluded to, I think Caden Neville could actually see a lot of game time. Just as the season head, he's the biggest body there for sure. And he's been looking pretty fit, so we'll see. But do you guys why do you think Caden Neville's stocks are falling, guys?
Honestly, I just think that he's getting older. He's actually quite an older player now, and I don't think he has nearly the same ceiling in terms of his potential as all the other guys. So every year, I believe they're going to keep catching up to him more and more, and I just don't see him being a consistent starter for them for the next number of years. So if there's ever going to be a year where we start seeing them come through, I think Darcy Swain is due a big season. Tucker's come over as a starter as well, so I think he's got too much pressure there to play consistent game time like he did last year. He's 32 years old. He's getting on, and he was never a huge name.
And he started his rugby career pretty late. I don't know. There's something about him that he feels like Mr. Fix-It in the locks. If you need someone, put him in. I don't think he's your solid out and out starter for me, and that's what I'd be looking for.
Fair enough. Any other stocks are falling, or is that we're good?
That's who we have, mate, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's not huge amounts of changes for the Brumbies. Look, I think if we jump across to the Smokies, Jerome Brown, he got, I think, stuck. Oh, no, he had to go to some family things back in New Zealand and then didn't get the chance to come back. And lovely that, as a club, they let players go to sort some of that stuff out. But he is just an absolutely exciting young, back rower that can cover 6, 7, 8, I reckon. And so he's got potential to fill a spot there for them. And depends with Tom Cusack. Tom Cusack's there, probably first choice 7. They could always shift Pete Sama across there as well. So it just depends on what they want out of that back row. But I mean, here's a guy you're going to see more of this year, and he's just got big raps on him. Kiwi under 20s player. I think he's going to be ready and raring to go.
And I think the other thing is you got to remember that Tom Cusack could potentially at some point leave to go to the Australian 7 squad for the Olympics. So, he's definitely been around that squad, which just means that there's maybe a little bit more favouring Jerome Brown. And if he's playing consistent minutes, I got to think he's at least Tom Christie style consistent points where he just has such a huge work rate, but maybe he's got a bit more upside in the running game as well.
Yep.
I agree. That back row, Valentini, Brown, and Samu, that's pretty sick. I had kind of forgotten Brown can also play 7, but reflecting on it, absolutely. So
Yeah, definitely.
exciting. And what about Len Ikitau, our other Smoky? Harry, what do you think about him?
Yeah, look, I love calling him a Smoky, but I feel like everyone in the world talks about him for the Brumbies coming through. He made every single one of his tackles through Super Rugby last year in his game time. He's only 22 years of age. He's coming in as the clear heir apparent to Vita Chuchu, and he was in the Wallabies squad last year for a reason, and that is because they believe that they've got big things destined for him. So I think he's going to be the most likely man to lock in that 13 jersey all year. Obviously, Qatar's the only one that could take that away from him. So the Brumbies haven't historically given huge points to their outside centre. I think he's going to have to really make a lot of line breaks to be a consistent fantasy scorer. But, Chuchu can do it in his best form. Hopefully we can see something similar from Mikitau.
Yeah, look, I think he's quite a different player to Chuchu as well. And I think there's probably a reason in this, what we're talking about him coming through, probably a reason why Chuchu's left. I think he's been told maybe he's going to be reducing his minutes if he feels like, wanting to be a starter, he might have to go elsewhere. I think Ikitau has some very big raps. He's got a bit more of a step to him, a bit more agility to him. I think a bit more of a dynamic player rather than completely run over you and destroy you like Kurandrani does. So I think he's going to be quite exciting.
I think, like Henry State, Chuchu he's had enough of the Canberra cold and wanted to move over to some nice sunshine in Perth. But no, I agree. If you want to see some good highlights from Ikitau, he featuring for the Wallabies in those trial games against Argentina last year, had some pretty fantastic performances there, scored some amazing tries. So definitely check that out. But very good. That'll do the Brumbies. Let's move on to the Rebels. New faces, Harry.
Joe Powell, we've mentioned him already. Steve Cummins has come back from Powell. I think it sounds like it's a like-for-like swap for Matt Phillip, except for the fact that Steve Cummins is nowhere near as good.
Wait, I played with Steve Cummins, so that must mean he's good.
Is he played for America?
No.
Is that him? Who's that bloke?
No. I know who you're talking about. I forget.
All right.
I thought you'd say Steve Cummins played with you, Nelson. But, that's good on him.
Sordoni, the Jaguares prop, an Argentinian reserve prop as well there, the tight head, and Ignacio Callas, who is a big unit, a giant unit at lock, who they've obviously brought in to plug some holes. And I heard Cameron Orr in one of the other podcasts, Pick and Drive, I think it was, saying that there could be a few big announcements coming, and they still have barely any locks in depth. So
I think that's him.
I'm hoping that there may be something else.
I think that's an older pod, and I think
the Argies were already mentioned in that pod at the time.
That's
so
true.
I'm hoping there's more. Look, there's other names. Ed Craig coming across on a full-time contract from the Reds. He's a high wraps player for a hooker. Carter Gordon, same thing. They've brought him down as a potential fly half option, and you may see him feature. And then there's a couple of the sevens guys. Lewis Holland, the top ever point scorer for the Australian sevens, who can play centre or 10. Lockie Anderson can play centre and outside back as well. Could get in there on the starting side, given the lack of outside backs they've got.
Throw in Jarrell Skelton, he's quite excited. Carter Gordon, a huge loss for the Reds coming across, a good cover for them. In terms of the losses, Craigs, do you want to go through some of those losses?
Yeah, sure. Anaru Rangi, who had been great competing with and taking most of the game time from a perennially injured Jordan Ulisi. So he's a big loss, I think. Stolberg, S.A. Hungana, so they're lock stock, basically. Those two and Matt Phillip, all gone. Who else do we have? Jermaine Ainsley, tight head prop. He's been a stalwart for them the last couple of years. And Samisi Tupou.
For me, I reckon the biggest loss is Matt Phillip. How can you go past him? He's a huge loss. Ryan Lowrens, he was exciting. He was massive for them when he got his chance last year, and I'd love to see him back in Australia. That guy still looks like he's on steroids. Don't go look back in his history. Tom English, stalwart for them. He'd been missed to fix it for a long time. Andrew Kellaway, brilliant in the first part of Super Rugby. Faded away in Super Rugby AU a little bit. So he's a bit of a flaky player, but boy, he is talented when he's at his peak.
When he's on.
Billy Meek's a player that is a beautiful bald man. He's got his own bald T-shirt brand as well. Very exciting. And Andrew Deegan. So they've lost a lot of people there.
And pre-COVID, Luke Jones as well. So just more six and lock depth as well. Gideon Hochlenberg. So just every single lock they have other than they've got one left, don't they?
And I'll throw Angus Cottrell out there as well. I was a big fan of Angus Cottrell. I think.
Yeah.
They've got some good.
Actually, I wasn't that big a fan. Best 15, I'll go the forward pack because I'm clearly the most qualified to do that here. Cameron Orr, Jordan Ulisi, Pony Fa'amausili. I think that is a huge front row for them, and the more minutes they get, the better.
Yep.
Steve Cummins, I actually am leaning more towards Ignacio Callas just because he's a giant human being.
And so Steve Cummins, he's over 2
meters.
Cummins
just does. I mean, he's a bit.
Doesn't excite you in the same way.
Trevor Hosea, I think, set for a big year. Josh Kemeny, I don't know where I stand. He's slowly winning me over. He's a big work rate player. They obviously really liked him last year, so he's only very young, and he has featured in some of the good under 20 sides as well. So I think he could have another big year as well. Brad Wilkin, Issy Nassarani as well. I'm hoping Nassarani's got his fitness right this year.
Look, I really think there's a lot of potential in that back row. Brad Wilkin, I think, is a really talented back rower who's just had too many injuries. And I don't know what it is about Kemeny, but he's starting to win me over too. He's maybe it's because he's got the rig and the look about him. And he's just a high work rate player, but hopefully
he kind of reminds me of a young Sean McMahon. Maybe not quite as dominant.
Not as dominant, but I can see where you're going.
He's a mold of that and kind of a Swinton type. Like he's a taller, bigger guy.
Yeah. He's 193 and 104 kg. So he's a relatively decent sized guy. Moving into the backs, Joe Powell shifting across from the Brumbies to make sure he can start and get some good minutes in footy. Matt Tamua, I think we've got, in the start of the year, we think he'll be their starting 10 with maybe Reece Hodge and Campbell Magnay in the centres. There's something missing in that centre pairing for me. They're both quite exciting players, but there's something missing there for me.
I like that. Big units. I love it. The defense of that three you just named, Tamua, Hodge, and Magnay, that's epic right there.
Mate, I don't know how much I rate Hodge, who just got run over repetitively for the Wallabies last couple of years as a defender. But yes, Matt Tamua is really good, and Campbell Magnay had shown glimpses of brilliance a few years ago and is massive. Mm-hmm. That's about it. I think the other two, you might be a little bit too generous in terms of defense. But Marika Korobidi on one wing, super exciting, and hopefully not Tom Pincus on the other wing. Look, he's not a bad player, but he's not going to set the world alight. Maybe they've got one of the sevens players coming through, like Louis Holland and
Anderson.
Sorry.
I think,
yeah, Louis Holland would be a wrong position. And Dane Halett-Petty at fullback, DHP.
Very good. All right. Well, that takes us into some key questions. So, been holding back on this one, Nels, particularly I'm sure you're keen for it. Will some of these sevens players get a crack in the matchday squad? I think we just kind of harped on about this all last season. Just like, just chuck them in, put the boys in. Will it happen this year?
Yeah, look, there's a few guys that could definitely fill those roles. I don't know where they sit in their pecking order, but I mean, we've touched on it. Louis Holland, Lockie Anderson, Jarrell Skelton, these guys could be some really dynamic, exciting players for them. They're going to be fit. I mean, Jarrell Skelton's only 21 as well and can cover, a couple positions in the back row. Pretty good stock with Peter Beetham and Will Skelton as his cousins. He's someone I'm excited for. He seems to not necessarily be the first one on the tip of the tongue of people when they're mentioning some of these seven players. But some people love him as well. So I don't know what it is about him, but I hope we see him.
Again, my biggest problem with these guys is that the Olympics is in the end of July.
Which is a huge who knows.
Yeah, but look, if they take a bare minimum of 3 months, then they play to the end of Super Rugby AU and then they disappear. to condition themselves up. And you can't tell me the former captain and top ever point scorer Louis Holland isn't going over for that.
No, my issue was, is it going to happen?
I mean, at the moment, they've said it's definitely happening.
And they also said a week earlier it wasn't. So.
Last year, they said that any players from 15s that wanted to spend time in the Sevens program and have a chance of making the Olympics needed to spend 6 months with them.
Yeah.
Which would mean end of Feb, they're gone. So there's no way you're going to give these guys in if they're going to disappear after round 3.
There is a 7 side that has been named Aussie 7 side recently, and there's a few new players in there and things as well. So it's really hard to know. I mean, we haven't heard really what these players are doing.
And the biggest issue is there's no funding, right? So they're not going to be able to pull them away for as long either.
And they're getting most of their money probably from their Super Rugby, playing Super Rugby, right?
Yeah, so to get us back on point, I guess, in terms of position, Skelton, we think, is a back rower. That's where
back rower could cover anything he wants.
Lewis Holland can play 10. The
10,
centre, we'd probably see him in the centres, I think.
10,
sorry?
Yeah, 10, 12, maybe 13, I suppose.
Yeah, and Lockie Anderson probably out there as a winger. The reason we've said Tom Pincus is he's kind of your more out-and-out winger. And I think they played him a handful of games last year, but Lockie Anderson would be incredible out there, I think. I'd love to see him.
Yeah, I think he's probably a good shout.
All right, loose forwards. Bit of rotation. There's a lot of battles there. We just mentioned Skelton, Hardwick versus Wilkin. I think if we all had to pick, we're all picking Wilkin. I think Nelson said he praises him. I'm picking Wilkin.
I froth him Wilkin. He'll be in there.
I don't froth on Wilkin, but I pick him over Hardwick.
I think when he's had his chances, he's been pretty brilliant. So
then there's the battle. I was going to say we have Nazarani for sure at 8, and then there's the battle of Kemeny and Wells. So Michael Wells has also been pretty good, another 7th player as well, actually. But, they seem to be preferring Kemeny, so we'll watch that battle. But it's always good to have some depth in those positions. Harry, Carter Gordon, CG.
Harry doesn't rate him anywhere near as well as me. I think
no, that's not it. I mean, I just think even when we breeze past him as losses, Nelson goes, he's a huge loss to the Reds. Well, he's not a huge loss. They got James O'Connor and Amy Stewart, and he's literally never played a single minute. So it's not a huge loss. To
be fair, he's a huge loss because they don't have any developing young 10s coming through. He was
Amy Stewart?
He's not a developing
10. Pasatoa's heading back there. I'm telling you.
Yeah, they just buy Pasatoa back once his development's done.
Look, I think for them, he was seen as the future 10 of the Reds, and they didn't want to let him go. I think he is a huge loss. Not because he's going to be the best player in Super Rugby this year, but because they had their stock on him as their future 10. So I think it's a big loss.
There's a lot to happen until then. I don't think he was ever going to have a big season for the Reds this year with James O'Connor there either. So
I think if
they can get him back in the next couple of years before Jock leaves, I think it's all good.
Well, my thing about Carter Gordon was I think people misunderstand a little bit of the dealing with him and Pasatoa. In 2019, he was picked above Pasatoa as the main starting 10 for the Aussie schoolboys. In 2020, everyone started to froth on Pasatoa a little bit more because he was that leading 10 when they beat New Zealand in that tour. But Carter Gordon was injured. So when they've both been competing with each other, Carter Gordon's been the first choice on the majority of the time. So, I mean, both of them are really, really talented. You watch his highlights reel, and he's got a turn of pace. He's got a brilliant pass on him. He's got a good step. He's got all the makings to be a really good player. Super young. We put way too much pressure on any of these guys, but he's an exciting player coming through. Hopefully we get to see him have a chance.
Very good. Well, that's a lot of hype for Carter Gordon. But that does lead us into our last key question, Reece Hodge. So speaking of Carter Gordon, if he is playing, then does Reece Hodge play wing? Like we talked about, where does Reece Hodge play? What's his best position every year?
His best position is on the special team coming on the kick.
No. Like, look, if Tom Pincus is playing on the right wing, I would far rather have Reece Hodge playing
100%.
wing. But sadly, he is automatically Mr. Fix-It. Dan Halapetty hasn't been fit and healthy properly for any extended period of time for a couple of years. So maybe that means he just slots in at fullback and at DHP can sit on the wing and get away from a little bit more of the spotlight as well. Who knows? That would work for me as well. I think in terms of his best position longer term, they should stick him at inside centre.
Yeah.
But equally, Matt Tamua can play 10 and 12. You got Carter Gordon there as well, and you got Louis Holland. So there's a couple of options in that 10-12 channel which would allow Reece Hodge to slide back to the back. But I feel like every year we have this conversation, and you can put him anywhere from 10 to 15.
Sadly,
You see the complete out of left field, mate. He played 10 for the Wallabies, Reece Hodges. Playing 10 for the Rebels at Tamura at 12.
I don't think so, mate.
Really vary it up.
Yeah, look, it's not a bad option, but the issue is that Matty Tamua wants to play 10, and he's clearly their senior leader. So I don't think you can shift him to 12 from makeshift 10.
Yeah, look, I still don't think Hodges a 10. Yes, he was a 10 while we beat the All Blacks, but you have to play a very specific way, and I don't think it's necessarily how they want to play. You can't then, stack other just bigger bodies around him in the centers and other positions. Like, I can't see him being 10 for them.
Very good. Speaking, sorry, I was about to move on, but we have one last key question that has been highlighted. Harry, halfback battle. How does that play out?
Well, you got Lamani from Fiji. You got Joe Powell coming across, obviously, and Tuttle as well. I think is ex-Reds player. Had a couple of Achilles ruptures and then kind of got himself back into fighting form at the back end of last season as well. I think he even suffered another little injury at the back end, but he was another hyped up young 9 that can kick goals and do it all as well. So obviously I think Powell's probably the first choice, but Lamani has all the potential in the world, didn't quite take his chance last year when he had it. And Tuttle is going to be fighting for game time. But I don't think it should be a given that Powell's the starting 9 all the way through. There's 3 talented 9s there that could all push each other.
Yeah, look, I think Powell's, he's a very good player, and he's come across probably with discussions of him being their 10. I think that's probably why he's their 9, sorry. Probably something that was discussed when he got signed, but I mean, realistically, there is a lot of competition there for him because,
mate, I don't believe anyone has ever been told you are going to be the 9.
I don't think that. But I think when you're having signings, they're going, you have a good potential to be our starting 9, or we see you as a starting 9, or we.
Harry, if we signed Aaron Smith to any team over here,
when you sign that, they're parts of the contract discussions. Whether they see you this year as a starter, or as you're fighting it out with a certain person or whatever, they are parts of why you sign at clubs a professional contract in any sport you play. So he
just backs himself. He'll back himself to be the starting 9.
But he didn't back himself at the Brumbies.
That's because Nick White's there.
I want to say, to round out this point, I think that it's a firm battle between Lamani and Powell, but I don't have Bobby Tuttle up there in the same category.
Mate, I do. I think
he's certainly third, but that's just my opinion.
I think Tuttle could be their bench 9. I think he's a very, very talented 9. And when he's had chances in the NRC previously, I think he showed he had potential as a very young player to go into higher honours. The fact he's an amazing goal kicker as well and quite a fast ball player, I think he's got a lot of potential there for them. I mean, we really, really like...
He's got to get his body right as well.
His injuries.
2 Achilles ruptures. It does take a little while to get your power back from that. So I'm hoping that he's at full fitness this year.
Yep.
If you want a fantasy halfback that bores you to death, that gets you points because he makes 9,000 passes a game, Joe Powell's your man, basically. But
if he loses minutes, that's his problem. All of a sudden, his value declines significantly.
True. He's not getting those tries or points from that, really. I mean, he's got some tries, but very few. So. All right, stocks are rising. 2 players we're very excited about, hoping they both have very big years, both in the Wallabies squad last year. Trevor Hosea, we'll start with him. Look, I mean, I forget how old he is, but he came pretty much straight out of the 20s into the Rebels, into the Wallabies last year. And, he was put through a program where he was originally a little bit lanky, so they put on some size on him. And he just has all the skills, big ball runner. Very excited to see. And I think we could say he's got a lock on that position all year, and we'll see him improve. So I'm excited about him.
Yeah, funnily enough, he was only 20 at the start of the international season last year, and still I was thinking that he was a smoky to be on the bench for the Wallabies after 1 season of Super Rugby AU. I got big raps on him. I think he could be a very, very good player, and he's still going to be developing this year, but surely he's their top lock.
Yeah, he's got the size. He's got everything about him. I think, the departure of Matt Phillip means he's going to get now 80 minutes in my eyes a week rather than, 65, which is what he was getting previously. So another year in Super Rugby and after some Wallaby squad, I think he's going to have a bigger presence on the field, more time. So I think his stocks are definitely rising.
Absolutely. And our second man stocks rising, Pone Fa'amausili. So, look, my fantasy team will be complete if I get both Pony and Tupou as my props. I can really move on with my life and be happy. How good is he's just going to get more minutes. His average was 35 minutes. We're hoping that bumps up to around 55 minutes this year. There might be a little bit of tension there with the signing of Sordoni coming across. So Argentinian international prop has played for the Jaguares and for Las Pumas for a couple of years. Still a youngster, but certainly a serious tight head. But I think Pony's certainly the firm favourites, and it's his jersey to lose, if you will.
My only doubts about Pone is they got held up 19 times, I think it was, over the line last year, and on those goal line dropouts, which will be around again this year, he was the guy that got those meters coming back, and there's so many run meters there for a big prop. So I'm just hoping that he still managed to get his hands on the ball enough.
Is that a doubt? Everyone loved it. Everyone's talking about it.
No, I'm saying because what's the chance of them getting held up over the line 19 times in 10 games again?
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't on.
Crazy.
He wasn't on for a lot of those. He was on for some of them. That's the ones we know. So, he gets more minutes. Maybe he's on for a similar amount.
And look, we've said it to death, but in case you haven't heard it one more time, this guy, he's played number 8. He's played props. He's basically a number 8 who they put into prop. He's amazing. There's the smallest chance ever. No, it's probably 0% chance that we'll actually see him play number 8. But look, if all the back rowers get injured for some reason, Thorpe Sordoni in to start tight head, Pony back at number 8, now we're talking. So that should be good. Nelson, you want to take us through the stocks are falling?
Yeah, look, I think there's only one main one that stands out for me, Richard Hardwick, Dickie Hardwick. He's 26 years old, came through the pathway in Western Australia, but he was born in Namibia. He made Australia in 2017. He had so much going for him. I don't really know why he's faded away. I think he was quite a good player at a young age, but he didn't seem to continue developing through the handful of years afterwards.
I can answer that. It's the Carter Gordon effect. You said so many times that he's the best player ever and he's going to be God's gift to rugby, and he never was.
I mean, my mate, no, I didn't. I thought he was quite a good young flanker, but Carter Gordon, mate.
No, I don't.
Are you saying that Nelson's also
could be a great
of Fraser McBride as well? Nelson's been talking him up.
Oh no, Fraser McBride is far.
He has been somehow because Nelson's given him his blessing.
Fraser McBride is probably a Wallabies captain.
There's always an exception to the rule, isn't there? There's always an exception.
No, he's far above everyone I've talked about. So.
Very good. And Harry, have you just added in one more?
I just think Frank Lamani, he obviously got some good game time the back end of last year with Ryan Lowrens getting injured. And I don't think he has it all his own way this year, and we talked about that already. So I think his stocks are definitely falling.
Very good. All right, well, let's shoot through these Smokies. Steve Cummins, I was going to say, thank you for leading that.
But I just needed to do that so I could drop that I played with him. But he's not going to be good fantasy points.
Very good. Carter Gordon, we talked enough about him, but look, Carter Gordon, Lewis Holland, if they see some game time, they both could be really, really good. Lewis Holland, I'm more excited about. I just want to see the guy get some time. I want to see him in the midfield at 12 or 13, but we'll have to see with that.
No, look, the fact that we bracketed these two together was more because Andrew Deegan's gone, so it's how the Rebels finish, how they fix this hole. Does Matt Tamua play 10, in which case I think Louis Holland's probably pretty likely to get some game time if it's not Reece Hodge. And if they shift Tamua to 12, then Carter Gordon is probably the favourite to get a few more minutes. So they're both a decent option if you're looking for a long shot late in your draft to try and pick someone up that could be worth some good points. And,
Very good.
I have shat on the Carter Gordon hype train a little bit, taking the wheels off it, but I actually think he's a very good young player. I just think he's way too overhyped.
And he does kind of look like you, Harry, as well. So you should get behind him.
You hype up Pasatoa, though.
Yeah,
you're not saying
he's better, mate. He's fucking
better. Pasatoa's the best. I hype him to Wallabies fly half.
It looks good. That's the difference.
I love Pasatoa.
Mate, I think they both can be cool. Look, Ilekeni Vudogo is an exciting player. He was in the Fijian 7 squad after being, I think he was, he won a competition as like the top player of the comp for Fiji under 20s. Travelled to the Broncos for I think he signed for 2 years. And then, he's found his way back into the 15-man code. He's an outside centre, but he's got all the skill sets so that he could cover wing, which is something that the Rebels need as well. So we might still see him there. That's pretty good value if you're a centre and you're playing on the wing as well. So it'll be interesting to see if we get to see him play.
Very good. All right. And now we're going to move on to why the listeners are here. Let's talk about the Queensland Reds, the most exciting team in the Aussie Rugby Conference. New faces. There's only two I want to mention. You guys can bring more if you want. Suliasi Vunivalu. How good is he going to be? I am pumped. Can't wait to see that. Having him and Dalguna on the wings, unbelievable. And Zane Nongor. So I guess a new face in that he might have been upgraded to a full-time contract because he certainly did play a few games at the end of the last season coming off the bench. Tongan Thor 2.0. I mean, can you get any better than having a Tongan Thor come on and replace the Tongan Thor? Just no, you can't. Is the answer to that. So
it's very like Bowser and Baby Bowser. That's it.
that is literally it. It's fantastic. So that's good. Any other new faces of note worth noting, guys?
The Red hype train is just at full steam ahead all the time at the moment, and I freaking love it.
They just do it so well.
I know. I just assume that all these players are amazing. But Mac Greeley, Josh Fluke, we talked about it.
On that, if the Waratahs can't sign any players, they should at least sign the media guy for the Reds. Get some hype out there. You know what I mean? Jeez.
Yeah. Kalani Thomas is another player. There's just so many good ones. He's another young halfback there as well.
Schools.
Is it
Josh Fluke, Mac Greeley,
Droasizi?
Yeah.
There's big hypes on him as an outside back as well. Ryan Smith is a good young lock, and Lawson Creighton as well. There's so many players. There's some good guys in their development squads as well. So yeah, they are very good at hyping up their players. But I think the ones that you mentioned are probably the guys that you'll actually see get on the park a little bit more. Fluke could be a chance as well with one injury. You might see him getting some games, but that's about it.
Excellent. Nels, the losses. Take us through the losses, please.
Mate, there's a few massive ones that, hurt most people when you talk about it pre-COVID or Super Rugby AU due to COVID. That was Harry Hockings, Isaac Rodder, and Isaac Lucas, as well as we saw Henry Spate head offshore at the same time. They're just massive losses, but, I mean, they coped pretty well through the back end. The losses that are more fitting and the more, important are, Chris Faraway Sortia. He was an awesome fantasy player, an awesome player to cover wing and outside center. I do think, you've got someone to fill that void with Suliasi Vunivalu. So sadly, he's going offshore, but he's an exciting player and sad to see him leave. Scotty Malulua, he was an option there at halfback. And
I really liked him.
I really liked him, but also I like his cover there as well.
Halfback for Samoa in the World Cup.
And JP Smith. The Smith brothers are a pretty big loss for them.
Yeah, and look, a couple of their young props have been listed as out of the squad as well, but now they're in the match day squad for the preseason game. So obviously the likes of Jack Straker and David Fayal, they're all still in and amongst it as well.
Yep. Another one is Michael Wood. He's head offshore from them. There's been a lot of hype.
Michael Wood's actually playing for the Warriors.
Not sure, sorry.
Oh, over the border again.
over the tricky border to New South Wales.
Is that a recent signing, or has that been signed?
Mate, I don't think it's a signing.
No, sorry, because I only just saw it yesterday in their trial squad tomorrow, and I was like,
I reckon it's a development contract or something like that. But look, Michael Wood, we had big raps on at the start of last season saying that he could be anything. Now, there's only one really worrying thing about him. He's a lock/6.
Yeah.
He's only 192 centimeters tall.
He's far too short to be a lock.
He's too short to be a 6, let alone a lock. So
Yeah.
I think maybe that's one of the things holding him back. But I really hope he can have a second coming and really take his chances at the Waratahs because there's a lot of hype around him as well.
because we need him. Very good. All right, let's get through the best 15. I'll take us through the forwards. Harry Hoops, BPA, and Taniela Tupou making your front row. Angus Blythe and Lukan Salakai Lotto in the locks. Liam Wright, Fraser McWright, and Harry Wilson. What a back row. How good. Very exciting.
Yeah, if we go across into the backs, Tatey McDermott God, he's a good, exciting player. So hopefully he gets that starting jersey in bulk minutes. With James O'Connor, the clear out and out 10, is matured a lot, and I think he's a very good player in their backline, directs them pretty well.
Especially without Carter Gordon there, right? Like otherwise he might have had a bit of competition.
Yeah, all that hype in the background just would have made him for sure. Yeah.
Blow it out of proportion, mate. Well done. And then I think something we would love to see would be Hunter Paisami at 12, Jordan Pataya at 13.
Surely.
I mean, to me, that's their best.
It's the Wallaby centre pairing.
Yeah, it's the best centre pairing. How can you not do that? With wings, you've got Suliasi Vunivalu and Filippo Daugunu. God, that's exciting. That could be a Wallabies wing pairing as well. Mind you, I really do like Tom Wright, but still, that could be a Wallabies wing pairing. And Jock Campbell at fullback, who I think he had an awesome season last year, and I'd love to see him keep developing.
And I would just say, going right back to the start of that team as well, we mentioned we have Harry Hooper down as the loose head. There's been some talk about what a massive loss JP Smith is. And don't get me wrong, I think he's a very good player for them.
Squad member.
But Harry Hooper has been coming through for a couple of years. I think we've all talked about him as a very talented player. And he was definitely the second choice through the back half of last season as well. Fayal Fatuika is the other one. He's a big unit and has the ability to do some good things as well, but I just can't see how Hooper couldn't be the starting prop this year.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely. He gets around the park. I think the last few seasons, the three of us have tried to bag him in our fantasy team when we can. But he does a lot of work around the park, apart from being good at set piece. So
he's pretty small.
His problem is he looks tiny.
He is tiny.
Sure, he's gotten bigger.
I don't think he's that small, to be honest, but
I think he's just not a bulky.
I mean, he's standing next to Zane Nongor and
Taniela Tupou
and Fayal Fatuika, so...
I mean, Taniela Tupou's thighs are twice the size of any other prop, so we can't...
Look, he's tall. He's 191. I knew he was tall. That is pretty tall for a prop, but 116 kgs. He's not bad. He just doesn't look it.
That's true. Anyway, let's move on. Key questions. Who is the backup 10? Are we back to Hamish Stewart, who firmly had been playing at 12? Or is it seasoned veteran Bryce Hegarty?
Harry?
I think it depends how they use them. I think it's probably Bryce Hegarty sitting on the bench and has the ability to come on to give James O'Connor a break. But if Hamish Stewart is starting, then I could see, or if it's pre-game, James O'Connor's out, I think they'd probably start Hamish Stewart.
Look, we just talked about what we want our centre pairing to be. So, realistically, Hamish Stewart might get a few cracks at that 12 jersey. But these two are probably going to be fighting it out for a bench spot. Both cover a couple positions. So it really depends who they think they're going to need to cover.
I think Bryce struggled to get any game time last year as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, we could well see both of them on the bench because Bryce can play fullback, Jock Campbell can move to wing, Hamish Stewart centre, Paisami or Pataya can play either centre position.
Or wing,
wing. So it's pretty versatile. But look, they've really liked Hamish Stewart and what he's been building to. And look, I think he's won a few of us over as well, playing in the 12 position. He's been getting better and better there. But Paisami and Pataya can't really go past that. So.
Yeah, he won me over as an inside centre. But
you know what? I could see Brad Thorne starting Hamish Stewart and Paisami as his centres to start the year, just until Pataya pulls his head in a little bit and stops playing such low percentage plays all the time.
That's
Stop talking smack about Pataya. Okay, he is
the
man. He's the best.
That's fair, and he might even go, let's make Vunivalu earn it for game one and put him on the bench with Pataya out on the wing, and then Vunivalu comes on and looks like a god, and they start him.
Just look at a photo of Vunivalu. He's starting on the wing, game one. Okay, it's happening.
By the end of the year, he is. Maybe by round two. But...
No. Game one, mate. Vunivalu is starting on the wing. I promise you. Very good. All right, that'll take us on to question number 2.
Wow, what a relevant next question, mate. How quickly will Suliasi Vunivalu take to start on the wing?
What a segue.
Game one. He will start at game one. Sorry, did we not say that?
Look, I could see him starting game one. It sounds like he's found his feet back in rugby union pretty quickly. Look, I think Tongan Thor.
Thorne on the wing. Tongan Thor started him on the wing. Whatever.
Brad Thorne, I think, is a man that works on respect and hard work and effort. And I just think he might make him earn it. And then maybe it's 1 week, maybe it's 2 weeks before he's starting. But I could really see him being made to earn it. while he's finding his feet, see if he does any of those silly, league convert mistakes that you tend to see him do. But by all reports, he's found his feet back in rugby, and he seems like a rugby player that was playing league, not vice versa.
Round 3, he starts.
I think that's pretty fair.
He's the ultimate human being, mate. Brad Thorne.
But I could still say,
athletic prowess. All right, we'll move on. Question
Before we go back to seeing Alex Murphy sharing more minutes with BPA, or has BPA got it all his own way now that he's the starting Wallabies hooker?
I think if you look at the last 3 years, BPA started 1 year, then Murphy, then BPA. So it's Murphy's year.
Well, Murphy was injured a lot of last year. Apparently struggled with some hammy and calf tear issues. And from what I remember, also absolutely lightning. Apparently their quickest forward in a sprint. So
I wouldn't be surprised to just see them splitting game time, taking it as like a international test squad.
I think they're gonna share game time.
Sure, it just comes down to who can throw a straight line out, doesn't it?
I think it hurts them both. Maybe that's quite a negative for BPA in my eyes.
Yeah. Very good. And our final question, will their playing style result in success in both Super Rugby AU and Bulldogs?
Whoa. How can we possibly have this question? This is basically our dessert.
Mate, I don't know.
Nah, spoilers.
The difference...
Spoilers. We'll come back to it.
No. My main idea for this question was they play hard and loose and fast and loose. It's going to suit probably, the Aussie Super Conference more than I think it will against New Zealand, who play a lot of their teams play a similar style. So will it translate into Trans-Tasman? I'm not saying will they come first or second in the Aussie comp, but...
Mate, I'm with Harry now. You're getting fast and loose and you're spoiling dessert. We'll get to it there. That question is basically, can they get Vunivalu the ball enough? And we'll move on. Stocks are rising. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Patire, I'm glad to see you've got him here. His stocks only go one way. They are the GameStop, the Dogecoin, baby. They only go up. And they start up really high as well, actually. So they start up at like Berkshire Hathaway and they keep going up, all right? He is unbelievable, only going to get better. Can't wait. Pick him first. What?
Mate, so for me, last year he had the 3rd points per minute with Chris Fairway Sortia above him, who is no longer there, and someone he actually shared some game time with, and Nani Laumape as the clear leader. So, I mean, he is going to be in the top couple. He's going to be a top couple centre. I think he is going to be awesome this year. He could be the top centre. I feel like he'll probably get injured, sadly.
If he starts on the wing, we call him a centre or an outside back?
I think he's a centre. I mean, he's a centre.
Cargie?
He's a centre. He's the Wallabies centre.
He's an outside centre.
Yeah, okay. Good.
And it's the same thing. If you're a winger...
Let me just get back to you. I'm going to check my fantasy team and what position I need him in.
We generally will play, if you flip him the coin between those two, he's going to be a centre.
Fraser,
very good.
Stocks are rising.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I've had my little Nelson, I'll let you have yours. Fraser McWright, mate. His stocks are certainly on the way up. How do you feel about him?
Mate, it's not the only thing on the way up, I can tell you that. He is an awesome player. He served his apprenticeship last year. He's going to start every week at that open side flanker jersey.
Let's say theoretically Michael Hooper gets stuck in Japan because of the COVID outbreak, can't get back to Australia for the test season. Just Fraser McWright start for the Wallabies as captain.
I was actually expecting you guys to just the COVID outbreak not getting back aside. I would assume you guys would just claim that. You'd claim
no, look,
we'll see Fraser McWright and Lachlan Boshier starting in the 7 jerseys.
The only chance we've got of that is if Hooper doesn't get a plenty game, because this Japanese comp keeps getting pushed back, and they share minutes between them. But this is the year for him to stamp his name into the future of the Wallabies. I don't think he's going to be a starter by the end of the year, but this is the time he's gonna rise.
He should Wallaby starter by the end of the year. Definitely Red Star.
Yeah.
Very good.
And look, stocks are falling. We've got Hamish Stewart. We've already discussed this enough, I think. But basically, Brad Thorne loves him, so be prepared for us to be completely wrong on this one. But we just don't see how we can possibly get enough game time when you've got the 2 Wallaby centres at 12 and 13 that should be pushing you out on the bench.
Oh no, their back row's too good. He could play flanker.
Who are you dropping, mate? The
No.
captain, Liam Wright?
Definitely no one.
Very good. All right, excellent. Well, let's move on then to some Smokies. I've already talked a lot about both of these players, actually. So Alex Murphy, we'll focus on him. We've just talked about the rotating back and forth. I feel like in the last few years, on average, it had seemed like Murphy had come out on top. I think we can say that.
In 2019, for sure. 2018, no. 2020 was so disrupted. I think they had he got games off the bench a lot of the time, but was that
He was injured.
No, not Super Rugby. The start of Super Rugby, before Super Rugby AU, he had some games, and I think he might have had a start or two, but was on the bench as well. So, but I don't know if he was carrying injuries right through the season or what it was. But to me, it looks like Pangamos is, slightly edging him, but I wouldn't be surprised if that.
Does it make a difference that BPA is just coming off pretty much the starter for the Wallabies? Does that make a difference here, or do we think Brad Thorne just doesn't care
I don't think Brad
what he's got in both these players?
I agree. I don't think Brad Thorne cares, because I think that's what was happening when Alex Murphy kind of overtook him.
Yep.
BPA had played game time for the Wallabies the year before as well.
Yep.
Excellent. And the other Smoky you've got down here is Suliasi Vunivalu. I haven't mentioned his name yet. If you haven't heard of him, I don't know why he's in here as a Smoky, because he's a blue chip stock. Starting game one, top scorer. Let's do it, baby. He's right up there. Very good. All right, let's move on to the Waratahs, the greatest team franchise in Super Rugby ever.
I'll start us with the new faces, and I'll start with someone that's got me excited, and that's Isaiah Parise. Not Parisi, like they spelt it wrong with New South Wales Twitter and everything like that. It ends in an E, not an I, guys. He is a super exciting player. If you didn't see, they spelled his name wrong in the team sheet.
Is that, you sure it wasn't you that spelled his name wrong?
No, but I'm saying it ends in an E, not an I. They spelt it with an I.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they spelled his name wrong at the team list.
The
The official team list that they had, it was spelt wrong.
Nice.
He is super exciting, wing/center. I think we're going to see him deployed more at outside center, and I think he's a very solid defender as well, solid on both sides of the ball. So he's a very exciting one, coming across from some struggles in recent years. Lit up the Reds before heading across to the Broncos. Had a bit of an issue there, and then Bayonne, and then not getting much time there before heading back. Other ones are Sam Caird and Jack Wetton, the locks that we've decided to get from New Zealand rather than sign any Aussies. But look, I think they're going to be some positives for us, as well as we have signed one Aussie, Sam Wykes. But I mean, he doesn't excite me other than he's experienced. He's got some luscious big hair as well, which looks good in all the back of the
photo. Has he ever excited anyone? Let's be honest.
His haircut, maybe. But
like, would I pick him above Rob Simmons? Yes, but apart from that, no. You know what I mean?
Look, I think he was a bit of a character in the Force, but I don't think he really lit the world alight. But he seems like a good, decent footy player, a lovely guy. But for me, I don't think he's got it above Caird or Wetton. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get some starts as a mature, experienced player.
I'm definitely most excited about Wetton there. I think he has the potential to be really good for us. Had a really good season for the Highlanders last year.
Yeah. The other ones are Alafasio Tatola, who's a loose head prop. Dave Perecki has pretty much been confirmed. We didn't know if he was in and around the squad or what was happening, but he's named to play tomorrow as their starting hooker, which generally means he's probably going to be on the bench round one. Should be Jack Grant, Henry Robertson, and Tane Edmund, the redhead fly half coming in. I think he's got some potential as well.
And Tane Edmund raises a big point that everyone's asking, which is what the hell happened to Ben Donaldson? Ben Donaldson, I thought, was really good in his few chances he got last year. He can play 10 and 15. Is apparently still, I think, listed in the squad, but isn't playing in their preseason trial tomorrow. So not really sure what's happening there.
I think there's a lot of speculation. Who knows? He could have a niggle. It could be anything else. It sounds like he's... you've got to assume he's in the squad. He's a talented young player coming through.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's move on to the losses. And we have Damien Fitzpatrick, who retired after, was it last year? It was 2019 where he had a really good season and kind of was hoping he was in with the Wallabies conversation for a little bit after years and years of being injured. And
he could throw a straight line out. So he had a chance at that Wallabies jersey.
Yeah, you're right. 2019.
For sure. Curly Beale, big loss. He's gone over to Racing 92. Can't really replace him, but very good. And Mac Mason. So poor Mac never really got the shot or the time that he needed. Just kind of sat there. Was a little bit sad, but
I would just say the guys that you're listening, mate, they all, again, they left before Super Rugby AU started. So the Waratahs have already had a bit of time to try and replace those people. So, they're listed in the Waratahs outgoing players, but realistically, they didn't play that whole second half of the year. So,
boys, there's a long list. We could take half an hour here, so let's rattle through some of it.
Michael Hooper, Carmichael Hunt, Tom Robertson, Ned Hannigan, Rob Simmons, Jed Holloway, Tom Staniforth, Cam Clark. They're the ones that I thought were really worth mentioning. Anyone else that you might actually have seen play? Mitch Short was a good young 9. Michael McDonald, we had big raps on as well. So there's a couple of others there, but a whole lot of experience gone from the Waratahs. And considering that the Waratahs, there was a lot of noise coming out from the senior players apparently not adopting this free-flowing attacking style that Rob Penny wanted to play, I think we may see a young team that really embraces this style of gameplay.
I think it's certainly the youngest team, aren't they? I think average age of 23. So,
well, the Western Force have more international caps per average starter than the Waratahs have Super Rugby caps.
Classic.
That's quite scary. But look, I think they're going to be a young team who I think will mold better, with a year experience under this new playing style, and hopefully they'll, we'll see them building like we saw the Reds in the last few years.
All right, best 15. I'm going to do the front 5 and then we'll move on. So Angus Bell, Tommy Horton, Harry Johnson Holmes, they picked themselves. Excited about them. It's a good front row right there. Angus Bell to have a tremendous year. And then in the locks, we just talked about it, kind of either Sam Wykes or Sam Card. And Jack Wedden is the lock there for sure. He's got a lock on lock. Nels, do you want to take us through the back row?
I will, mate. I am excited by some of these players. I think it's quite a good back row, despite the loss of Captain Courageous Hooper, who makes 1,000 tackles a match. But Carlo Tizzano, for me, is the favourite to take that jersey. You've also got Gamble there, but for me, I think Tizzano's more than likely the man in my eyes, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the other way around. Lockie Swinton, he broke into the Wallabies squad and, definitely does a job. He's a very exciting player, works very, very hard, will benefit from penalties being worth less this year. And Jack Dempsey, who I think came into his own again by the back end of last season and was really unlucky to not make that Wallabies squad. Last chance, I reckon, this year. So it's quite a good back row for me. In the halves, you've got Jake Gordon and Will Harrison. We know these two. Jake Gordon's, the new captain. Will Harrison, I think, is very close to a Wallabies debut. For me, almost on par with Lolosio. The difference is the team around him.
Yep. And in the centres, I think Joey Walton didn't set the world alight last year, but showed enough that he should be given a lot of game time this year. And he's obviously a young player with a lot of raps.
Got a hoof on him.
Isaiah Parisi, absolutely. We've mentioned already at the outside centre channel. And then that leaves Mark Nwanganitawasi, James Ram, and Jack Maddox as a really exciting back 3. Now, we are doing the same bias thing we always do and completely leaving out Alex Newsom, despite him being the vice captain last year. Realistically, I think Nwanganitawasi is the least likely to start out of that side, and Alex Newsom could be in his spot. We're just praying that he's learned how to defend because we want him jumping over Vunivalu to score cross-kick tries on the wing.
Yeah, look,
I think with Newsom, we'd seen him kind of that they firmed him up as a 13. So I agree. I think we all would like to leave Newsom out of our starting team, but I think we'll find it in it one way or another. And I think he's most likely to start at 13, even with Parisi. So I think.
I think for me, I think Parisi is going to be the starter, the definite starter out of those 3, whether he's at outside centre or wing. He's got an all-round game. Nwanganitawasi has some weaknesses. So, I mean, if he slots in to wing, then sure, we might see Newsom at outside centre, and that's where he's playing tomorrow night in the trial. So, I mean, that might well be what we see game one, Parise on the wing and Newsom at outside centre. But hopefully, Nwangani-Iwasi can earn himself that start.
And is there any chance at all of Tepai Moroa in the 12?
Look, I think there is. They obviously see something in him. We were going to touch on a little bit later. But look, I think he's a talented player. He was a dominant under-20s player, and he's taken some time to find his feet back in rugby. And hopefully we see it this year. But
it is possible that you could have Tepai Moroa at 12, Joey Walton 13, Isaiah Parisi out in the wing as well. You know, like there are a lot of options. I think the only two that we're pretty confident on and out of that back five is James Rem and Jack Maddox.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm pretty
All right, let's get into the questions. The back row and the Tars without Michael Hooper. Look, Nelson's talked about Tizano or Gamble. That battle there will be pretty fierce. I think Tizano is the go. I agree with you, Nelson. He's more what we want from a 7.
He's only 20 years old, mate. Gamble's come through the New Zealand system, 24, a little bit more experience. When you've got an ultra young team, I just feel like maybe a bit of experience might weigh a little bit heavier than what we're expecting.
Yeah, look,
that's a fair point.
A fair point, but he's also Gamble spent a few years in a bit of an abyss. He played subbies rugby, then worked his way through a shoot shield team. So yeah, he's a couple more years older, but he's also not got that much more development in terms of professional coaching there. So
to be honest, I'd be happy to say either of them. I
think they're both solid. So. I think we've seen more of Tizano last year. He got more of the chance in trials and had his name down a couple more times on that side. So that's one of the main reasons I'm leaning towards him.
Well, who scored more fantasy points? I feel like that's how we should really make this decision.
I'll look up Tizano.
And rounding out the back row, we've got 4 pretty solid back rowers for 6 and 8. We've got obviously Swinton and Dempsey, we think, starting. And then we've got the backup of Hugh Sinclair and Will Harris, who another player we're really excited to see. For ours, I think Will Harris, we'd love to see him on the bench, can come on at 6 or 8.
Yeah.
The guy just needs a shot.
I want Dempsey at 7 and Will Harris at 8.
But you can definitely put Dempsey in at 7. He is on the ball hard enough. And, you know,
mind you, he had a great year at 8 last year.
He was awesome at 8.
I was going to say, Dempsey, I think it was only a year or two ago, he was, man of the match in a Bledisloe series. Or something.
Back into the year, he was similar last year.
Yeah. So very good. All right, moving on. Harry, well, we touched on Nwangani-Iwasa's defence and the lack thereof. I, for one, can forgive that because look, in the man's debut, he scored 2 tries against the Crusaders.
How good.
Fashion. Get him on. I want to see that attacking prowess. I don't know. I mean, this question always comes back to Alex Newsom. Can he just go to the bench, please? But
yeah, we'll discuss that one. Let's keep going.
Let's move on. All right, Donaldson, 5'8". Well, we've talked about him as well. What do you think?
Well, he's always been in a bit of a battle with his good mate, Will Harrison. So I really hope we get to see more of him. Tane Edmonds, obviously big raps as well. But my gut feeling is if at most we'll see kind of bench time for him.
The Waratahs have this habit, like, for example, with Mac Mason, of just never playing the number 2. It's just number 1, all the minutes.
I think it was a little bit different last year. He got a bit of a chance. And Will Harrison, there's a lot of talk about him being a long-term potential future Wallaby prospect as well. So good to see him get some game time behind Will Harrison. Tane Edmund, a little bit fresher coming through. It's his first year in the system as a professional player, but also a really exciting player coming through.
All right, and last key question, I guess, kind of more of a sentiment or whatever, but it does feel like the Waratahs are kind of in a similar position to the Reds at the start of last year. So the youngest team...
2019, yeah.
2019 even, yeah. Youngest team, building, a lot of young, exciting players, trying to put together a new game plan. Will they follow a similar fate or can they make faster improvements? How do we think the Waratahs can iterate?
Without talking rankings, I think they'll make faster improvements. I think Brad Thorne in his earlier years was great at getting the Reds into a good headspace and physically prep, but didn't quite have the same depth that Rob Penny has, I believe, in terms of how they play the game. And it's more that when when Thorne had the right support staff, and he now has some excellent assistant coaches, that's when we've seen that next level being taken by the Reds. Most sides have their best year in the second year of a new coach. That's when teams really hit their straps. That's when the Checker era won their championship, for example. Rule doesn't apply to the Crusaders, who win everything. So I don't think this will be the Waratahs' best year, considering the turnover they've had, but I am expecting them to actually play better footy than they did last year.
And I think this year we can judge Rob Penny. Last year was a freebie. But it's easy to forget he's touted as a very good coach. So let's see what he can get out of the tie. Should be good. All right, stocks are rising. Let's do a player each. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to shotgun Angus Bell. How good, Belly Boy. They've got a few nicknames for him. Insider Trading Bell, Daddy's Boy Bell. A few of them, they're great. He's 20 years old. He's going to be the most capped Wallabies prop of all time when he's done, if he doesn't get injured. He's just so good. He literally, I've said it a million times, he's Mr. Incredible. I've never seen anyone built that way. We don't know how he runs through contact and he just doesn't go down. He just keeps, his post-contact meters are like Sean McMahon. He's unbelievable. He's good in the scrum. Huge year from him starting every game. Tom Robertson's gone. All right, I've said enough about him. I'm excited. Nels, who you got?
Oh, mate, look, I'll jump over to the next one. That excites me. I already talked to him about him, Isaiah Parise. He's just super exciting for me. He's got fantasy footy written all over the bloke. I saw this guy a few years ago bump 3 players off in a 1 meter square. Like, he didn't move to bump the last 2 blokes off. He was standing still. People were sprinting at him, and he was still bumping them off. This guy has fantasy footy written all over him. I'm excited. Hopefully we get to see him start from round 1. But
the Dave Rennie line comes to mind there about Dow Gurnu. He said he can beat you in a phone booth. So that's similar of that.
The thing about Parise is he can step as well, but he's a small man and he can run over you almost as well as
he's got to be dense.
Yeah.
It's hard to forget how good he was in his debut season for the Reds. He was pretty bloody good.
He's compacted Nairavoro, but he can actually defend.
Yeah.
Like, let's not start drawing comparisons to Nairavoro.
They played the NRC together, played every single match, and
let's not draw any comparisons to Nairavoro.
Because then that just means that Nairavoro didn't get enough pill.
It's because they were all defending Nairavoro.
Rams, that's the issue.
Yeah.
All right, Harry, round us out.
I'm going to say Jack Wetton because I think he'll play every minute and I think he's got a big work rate on him and the Waratahs need him to play that role. So in a position where there's not a lot of depth in Super Rugby AU especially, he could be a pretty solid mid pick for lock. But I would just say, caveat, I think the entire back line for the Waratahs could be up for a bit of a stock rise this year because the Waratahs are clearly trying to play a very physical game from their forward pack and a fast, open, attacking game plan flat to the line in attack. If they can start to get that physicality right in their forward pack, I think they can play really good, exciting footy. And even though they might not win every game, I think they'll be scoring a lot of fantasy points.
I agree.
Very good. And I think that rule applies to everyone except our next bloke. We're going to go to stocks are falling. The only back who, from our very biased view, will not benefit. Alex Newsom.
Yeah, we're not going to talk.
Certainly a leadership role, but he just is not better than anyone else there. That's mine. Yeah.
I don't think we'll talk too much about him. But the next one we're going to talk about is Tom Horton.
Why is he in stocks are falling then? I don't agree with this. Why is he in stocks are falling?
No, look, I think the only reason is, I think he's a potential Wallaby. He's just a bit too small. But the one thing for me is the question mark looming over Dave Parecki. Does he take some minutes off him? How does this work? We don't have any clue what Parecki's going to do. You can assume Horton will start and get most minutes, and that's what I'm hoping for and assuming. But we just don't know. And that question mark, for me, if you're going to go pick one of them, it just puts a little bit of doubt in there. Robbie Abel's still there as well. So, and they've got a young Joey Cotton come through who's a bit too far off.
I found out, apparently, rumours are that last year Robbie Abel was getting paid more by Gordon than he was by the Waratahs to play. So I don't think he's going to be playing too many minutes for the Waratahs this year.
No, I think they've brought Pariki in as a potential, at least a match day 23. I've heard a few other pods writing him off, but there's potential that he could be a starter from time to time, and even if he does it a couple of times, it's a big negative for Horden.
Yeah. Look, I've seen right through your plan here, Nelson. We had too many players and stocks are rising. You just wanted to talk about Tommy Horden and putting him back in the stocks are rising. Mate, he's going to play bulk minutes and get even better this year. I can't wait to see Tommy Horden. He's the type of hooker that we like, I think, for the Tars.
I agree.
All right, Smokies. Harry, who you got?
Will Harris. Huge number 8. We talked about him a lot in last year's podcast. So if you do listen to us, you're probably familiar with him. I think if he gets consistent game time, he'll be very, very good. There's obviously a few hurdles in the way for that to happen, but he's probably an injury to one of the starting 6 or 8 to actually get that game time consistently. So it's not out of the question.
Or let's be honest, if Lockie Swinton just gets a red card and is out for the season, Will Harris is straight in there.
Same thing. Yeah.
True. Very good. Another Smoky, Nels. Smoky, we talked about him, Gamble, Tizano.
Yeah, look, I mean, we talked about Gamble and Tizano. So whoever gets that starting jersey, they're both work rate players and, could be all right fantasy players. But look, I'm going to touch on Sam Caird, 202 centimeters, 116 kgs. A former junior AB, was in the blue squad but didn't get a chance last year. He's just a big body and he could be a physical player that, the Tars would like to see. I don't think there's a lot of competition in Wykes, so he might get some game time and, high work rate, bigger body. They might use him as a bit of a battering ram as well.
Can Will Harris play lock?
I think they've discussed him. I think he has played some lock. The issue is I don't think he's necessarily to the same height.
If he gets him on the field, I'm all for it. Don't care.
I'll tell you, he is 194 centimeters.
So probably not. But
get a Michael Wood, who's a lot.
All right. Well, I will go with Tepai Moroa. I'm excited by him. Look, to be honest, he's who I want to see at 12. If I have to pick my 12 for the Waratahs, I want to see him. He's certainly, we've commented, he has trimmed down an awful lot from last year. He's looking in tippity top shape, and I'm very excited to watch him in the trial game tomorrow night. He's just a big unit, runs hard lines, and that's what I want to see.
Look, I think he was so dominant at schoolboy level and as a centre, and had a lot of skills. But I just think for him last year was a bit too soon coming in. He was too big. He got sort of stepped and made to look like a bit of a fool. He is looking fit. So I think it could be a good year for him. I don't think he'll be someone who starts from round 1 all the way through. He may be, but he could be a good guy you can swoop in and get, a couple rounds in.
Fantastic. All right, let's move on. The Western Force.
There's a lot of new faces.
Yeah, I'm gonna rattle them off. We're just gonna nail them out. We can talk about them.
The whole team. It's almost the whole team. But look, Santiago Medrano, Tom Robertson, some awesome props coming through. Ryan McCauley, Tim Anstey. You might get to see them play lock. Thomas Lazana, Thomas Kubeli. I almost said Kubeshi because Craig's trying to butcher it. That exciting Argentinians coming through. Jake McIntyre thought he was coming across for the 10 jersey, but Domingo Miotti swooped in to take it off him, is my prediction. Davida Kurandrani coming across from the Brumbies. Tony Pulu and Rob Kearney all the way over from Leinster. There's a few other names there. Michael McDonald, who's been came through their pathways, also an Irish player.
Excellent losses. The only ones we care about. Henry Stowers, what a beast. Loved him. Otherwise, they've lost Heath Tessman, Jonah Placid, and Nick Frisbee. And they were very close to signing, but never quite nailed down Julian Montoya.
Apparently, it was because his missus couldn't get a visa.
Yep.
True.
Give her a visa.
Just break up with her.
Or he just got heaps more money going over to Leicester.
He must be worth a fair bit.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Best 15. I think there's probably some speculation. Well, actually, no. Look, let's go through it. All right. I'll go through
I reckon we got this.
Okay. I'll go through the front 5. Tom Robertson picks himself Andrew Reddy and Santiago Medrano, throwing him in there. We will give props to Wagner. I forget his first name, but he was very good in the tight head last year.
He's awesome.
It's
But
funny.
Medrano is a starter for the Pumas. He's going in there. Second row is Jeremy Thrush and, Ryan McCauley, probably because there's no other locks. So,
That's
Maybe Fergus Lee Warner.
Yeah, look, that's where the question mark is probably there. Locks, Fergus Lee Warner could definitely fill in there, and Tim Anstey could fill in as a blind side.
Fergus Lee Warner's definitely starting. We know that. So,
Yeah, no, he is. He's going to be 6 or lock. But if he fills in at lock, you could probably see Tim Anstey or someone else come into that back row.
All right, Nels, finish that back row off for us.
Yeah, so, I mean, we've got, at the moment, Fergus Lee Warner down at 6, Thomas Lozana coming across. He can be quite an exciting player for them, and Brian Thunder. So a lot of work rate in that back row. And then the combination between Thomas Kubeli and Domingo Miotti, for me, those two could be a really exciting pairing for them. And I think playing together, they've already got a bit of that.
It's too irresistible, isn't it? Having them play together, you know what I mean?
Let's not forget Ian Pryor, Jono Lance, that started all of last year.
Captain Ian Pryor.
And Jake McIntyre coming back as well. So there is a lot of competition there. It'll be interesting to see how they load it. Yeah. I mean,
Jono Lance after that.
I agree. Obviously, it's the first choice there.
Surely.
In the centres, we've gone with Kyle Godwin and Tavita Kurandrani. There again, there's other options, but they're the most obvious starters to us. Tony Pulu, if he's fit and healthy, which we believe he should be a starting winger. Surely not too old to get selected for the Force, given how they select. And Byron Ralston is probably their top choice outside back from last year. Rob Kearney is coming over. He is getting on in age now. How old's Kearney?
Oh, he's definitely in his 30s.
36 or something?
Oh, he's not. I don't think he's that old. I think he's not far off it, though.
Yeah, world class, though. One of the best fullbacks of the last decade.
Yeah, I have a little bit of doubts about him in terms of age. He's 34, as Harry said. I have a little bit of doubt about how much he's going to ignite this back line, but he's definitely experienced his class.
I reckon he's there to communicate and organise.
He could be a DHP, I think, for them.
Excellent.
Solid and, do some really good things, but I don't think he's going to look necessarily like a world-class.
Yeah, and I mean, the guys to keep an eye on as well, Tim Anstey, Kane Kateka, McIntyre, Kahui, can't forget him, McGregor, Strawn, Tafu, they've got a lot of guys that they've rotated through in the past. That it'll be interesting to see how they use them all, but I think we've probably gone with what's the most obvious big name signings.
Yeah, Jack McGregor was who we were most excited about last year. I thought he was really good, but Tim Anstey, I'm the most excited about seeing him play. I want to see him get some time. Another Aussie Sevens player. It'll be very good. So, all right, key questions. Cohesion above all else.
Yeah, so this is my question, because everyone's talking up how well the Force are going to go. I know they've brought in 4 or 5 Argentinian players, but that doesn't give you cohesion. They have the worst cohesion. Benny Darwin got asked what's it going to be like compared to the other side, and he said they're going to be horrendous, but everyone else is also pretty bad. So I don't know. I'm still thinking that it's going to take them too long to get themselves organised.
I agree.
In a very short season, and you throw on top of that the fact that there's now a little mini outbreak of COVID over in Western Australia, they might find themselves without a home again. So,
and they also
it's going to be a tough ask.
They might find themselves without a trial. It looks like they're not going to have a trial. It's a brand new squad. The season's short.
It's already been pushed from Friday to Tuesday, their trial with the Brumbies, yeah.
So they could really struggle with cohesion. And for me, I think that is single-handedly the reason why they won't be in the top couple teams at the very least.
Spoilers.
I'm going to go with our second key question. That reason is certainly one, cohesion, and number 2 is that they didn't sign Julian Montoya. He would have been huge for this team. He is an incredibly good hooker. Would have been very valuable, particularly packing down with Medrano as well in that front row. And you add Tom Robertson, who I feel like would scrum with anyone. Formidable front row. So that's going to be very unfortunate. But look, they do have Andrew Reddy and Feletti Kaitu. And Andrew Reddy was certainly proving us all wrong towards the end of last year. He was playing very well. But
Yeah, that's it, right? Like it's a definite step down, but Reddy's got some class about him as well. I really hope he can continue to grow. He's a very promising hooker as well, still pretty young. Stocks are rising. I've got Thomas Lozana. He has been up there in the loose forwards in the past when he was playing for the Jaguares. Has sometimes struggled to get game time over there. So I think in a team where he should be a senior leader and playing big minutes, he has the ability to score a lot of points. My only worry is that maybe in terms of fantasy, his scoring has dropped a little bit. He's scoring rate in the last couple of years, but it's the kind of side where he should be making a lot of runs and a lot of tackles. So I've got high hopes for him.
There's a couple high work rate players around him as well, but he's also filling a role. Who did we say?
Henry
left?
Stowers.
Henry Stowers left, who, it was utilised for a lot of runs. So he could hopefully fill that void.
Well, that's if you think about Fergus, Lee, Warner, Stowers, and Stander, like they use those three massively to try and get them over the gain line. So Lozano been used in that role as well. Maybe not the exact same kind of mold of player, but it should mean that he has plenty of opportunity to score.
Yep.
Absolutely. Tom Robertson, definite stocks are rising. Should be the starting prop, you'd think. Waratah's starter, Wallabies starter, just a good loose head prop. And he scores well in fantasy. He makes loads of tackles. He just gets on it with his work. So a prop that's going to start all the time, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to go across to the stocks are falling. I think I can touch on both of these. We've already touched on it already. John O'Lance, look, he might have dropped to the second or even the third choice fly half, which is pretty rough for him. He's not a bad player on the bench, covering a few sort of positions, and very experienced. Ian Pryor as well, another guy you got to feel for with Thomas Kubeli coming in, but Thomas Kubeli's combination with Miotti, and he's a better player. Look, I think for those two, they're going to struggle to get many minutes.
And the Smoky, Tony Pulley. I think if we had to pick one, absolute gun. Chiefs winger, didn't really get to play much for the Brumbies, but type of guy, give him the ball, see what he can do. What do they say? Fastest man in New Zealand rugby. Not sure if that's still the same, but
well, it's not because he's in Australia.
Fastest man in Australia, no,
Surely not.
Byron Ralston's pretty quick. So I bet they'll be having a lot of races, Byron Ralston and Tony Pulley. They'll be trying to claim that title. But,
Yeah.
very good. All right, that'll do us with the force and the main course.